Okay, take a look at this chart here. At first glance, it looks like a total disaster, right? A stock price in an absolute nosedive. But is this picture telling you the whole truth? Or is it maybe just showing you what someone wants you to see?
And you know, that question, it really gets to the heart of what we're diving into today, the core principles of data visualization. We're going to unpack the rules that let us turn a bunch of raw numbers into stories that are not just easy to understand, but are also, and this is key, honest.
All right, so let's start with the big why. Why do we even bother visualizing data? The simple answer is that we're basically tapping into a language our brains already know how to speak. It's almost like a shortcut. And this is such a critical point. Data visualization is not just about making your spreadsheet look pretty. It's a seriously powerful way to communicate. See, visuals have this amazing ability to bypass all that slow analytical thinking and go straight to perception. It's an instant hit.
And when I say faster, I mean way faster. Think about it. You don't really read a chart, do you? You just see it. That first impression, that gut feeling you get happens in a flash. And that's exactly why the design choices behind any visual are so important.
So how does this even work? How is that instant perception even possible? Well, it's all thanks to something called pre-attentive attributes. And you can just think of these as the visual superpowers our brains have, letting us make sense of things without even trying.
Okay, so the official definition is that they're the visual properties we process automatically. No conscious thought required. You don't decide to see them. Your brain just does. It's that classic pop-out effect, you know? When one thing just jumps out at you because it's different from everything else.
So just how fast are we talking? Get this. Less than 250 milliseconds. That is less than a quarter of a second. Before you even have a chance to think, what am I looking at? Your brain has already spotted the key patterns and the things that don't belong. And this is where good design comes into play, because we can totally use these attributes on purpose. Let's take color. It's probably one of the most powerful tools we have for grabbing someone's attention. It's perfect for showing different categories or highlighting that one key piece of information you absolutely can't miss.
Then you've got size. This one's pretty intuitive, right? Bigger stuff just feels more important. So when you vary the width or length of something, you're instantly communicating how much of it there is, or where it sits in the pecking order. Your brain doesn't need to read a label to know that the bigger bar means, well, bigger.
But if there's a king of all these attributes, it has to be position. Where you place something in a 2D space is, hands down, the most accurate way our brains can understand numbers visually. And that's exactly why things like bar charts and scatter plots work so well. They're built on our brain's amazing built-in ability to judge position and length.
Okay, so if our brains are wired to notice these things automatically, a smart designer can totally use that to their advantage. You can actually control where a person looks first and second and so on. It's like you're creating a visual roadmap, a hierarchy, that guides their eyes through the story you want to tell.
And the tools for this are actually pretty simple, but they're incredibly powerful. You make the most important stuff bigger. You use a bold, contrasting color to make something just pop off the page. And you arrange things in a way that follows how we naturally read. Do that, and you're making sure your main point gets across loud and clear right from the get-go.
But just like any superpower, these principles can be used for good or not so good. If you ignore them or misuse them, you can end up with charts that are confusing, totally ineffective, or even worse, flat-out misleading. So let's take a look at what happens when good charts go bad.
Okay, just look at this pie chart on the left. It's a total mess, isn't it? There are way too many slices, the colors are all over the place. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be looking at. This is a perfect example of what the great data viz pioneer Edward Tufte called chart junk. It's all the extra stuff, the ink on the page that adds zero information and just clutters things up. Now the one on the right? So much better. It's clean, it actually communicates something, it respects your time. And this really gets to Tufte's core idea, the data-ink ratio. Here's a simple way to think about it. Every single drop of ink on your chart should have a real purpose. Your goal is to have as much ink as possible showing the actual data and get rid of all the ink that doesn't. So that means saying goodbye to those cheesy 3D effects, those busy backgrounds, or those super heavy grid lines. It's all about subtraction. It's about letting the data be the real hero of the story.
But getting rid of all that clutter is not just about making things look nice. It's about being clear and being honest. And that brings us to a really important point, the ethical responsibility we have as designers to show data truthfully. So let's circle back to that chart we started with. The story it's telling is pretty clear, right? A huge collapse. It goes from a peak of over $130 all the way down to almost $115. It looks like a complete crisis.
But now that you know a little bit more about how this stuff works, can you see the trick? What's the one design choice that's making this story so dramatic? Go on, take a really close look at that vertical axis.
Aha, there it is. See the chart on the left chops off the y-axis. It starts at $110, not zero. And that one little trick dramatically blows every tiny little change way out of proportion. Now look at the chart on the right where the axis correctly starts at zero. The story is completely different. Yeah, the dip is still there, but now it just looks like a minor blip, not a 5-alarm fire.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if this was done on purpose to trick people or if it was just an accident. The result is exactly the same. The truth gets twisted. As someone who visualizes data, your number one job is to be true to your data and to your audience. Honesty and transparency, they're everything.
Okay, so let's wrap things up with a practical toolkit you can actually use. Because once you know these principles, it makes it so much easier to pick the right chart for the job. The key is that the question you're asking should always guide your choice.
Let's just break it down real simple. If your goal is to compare different things, a bar chart is your go-to. It plays right into our strength of judging length. If you want to show how something changes over time, a line chart is perfect. And if you're trying to see if two things are related to each other, a scatter plot is what you want, because it uses position to show you those connections. All right, so let's just quickly recap the main takeaways here. First, remember that visualization is communication, not just decoration. Second, use those pre-attentive attributes to guide your viewer's eye. Third, get rid of the chart junk. Keep it clean. And most importantly, always design with honesty and integrity.
Because at the end of the day, every choice you make, the color, the axis, the type of chart, it's all part of telling a story. With these tools, you have the power to make things clear, to help people understand, or to mislead them. So the question you always have to ask yourself is this: what story are you going to tell?